Alright, welcome to an episode on can you save your shitty work in the color grade? No, but you can make it look a bit better. In this one, I'm not going to talk too much about fixing mistakes. I'm just going to talk about my workflow and how I grade. And I've never actually learned how to grade 16mm film, and there's not that much information online about it. So it's just been a trial and error kind of thing over the last several years, what works best for me. So if I'm doing something wrong and you want to blast me about it, I probably am. But fuck you. Nah, jokes. Just let me know if there's any tips to make this workflow better. And when I'm color grading 16mm, I usually like to have a color balanced image and quite saturated. So I'll show you how I achieve that on a few different images. All right, so let's start on the shot here of this old mate punching a dart. So it's the start of a roll, that's why it burns in like that. So if anyone doesn't know, when you get your film scanned and returned back to you, it comes back as this kind of log image. And this was scanned as a ProRes 422 2K file. So on the first node, I'll usually get the contrast right. All right, for me, I don't really know the accurate way how to do this, because if you put a color space transform on there, and you were to try to use, say, Alexa with log C, it's just, overcooked. So I just dial in the contrast myself. So I've usually overexposed the shot a little bit. So I'll start bringing it down on the offset, lift up the gain, and then I'll bring down the midtones quite a lot. That's where the skin tones really start shining nicely. And this clipped out red here, that is from the burn from the film on the side. So I'll go into the log wheels and I'll just lift the shadows up a bit. I like to have them just above the clipping point. And that's looking pretty good for the contrast. I'll make another node. And we'll balance. This is a color balance. And I usually just try with the temp and the tint first. Bring that down to make it start looking a bit more natural. And I'm just looking at the parade and lining these up. I like to have a balanced image, like I said. I'll probably keep it about there for now. Then let's add some more saturation. I usually go a little bit more and then dial it back from there. That's saturation. And then I'll usually add one more node at the end for sharpening. It just enhances the grain a bit more, especially when you're uploading to places like YouTube. So I go into this sharpening area and just pull this down about 0.47. I don't know if you can see the difference of that. It just pops it out a bit, especially on YouTube. So I think that's pretty good for me. Alright, this next one is a bit more of a fixing up kind of scenario. This was shot on a tungsten balance film without a conversion filter, so that's why it's all blue. I think it was 500T in daylight conditions. So let's see if we can fix it up a bit. And why it was shot in tungsten film in daylight, you might ask? I don't know, I think it was all we had. Alright, so again, I'm going to start by bringing the offset down quite far. Pulling up the gain. Bringing the gamma down. And then I'll just set the luma mix to 0 so I can individually just move the red, green and blue around in the offset. So again, I'm just balancing out the image by matching up the colors in the parade. And then stretch them out a little bit if they need to be. Like the blue, it's really high, we need to pull that down. And then I'll jump across into the log wheels, lift it up a little bit, and then I'll make another node and I'll try and get some saturation out of the water. So I'll select that, it should be pretty good. Denoise it a bit, blur it a little bit. And then crank that soldier boy. Then we'll do another node for the overall saturation. And then one more node just to sharpen it up. Alright, this next one here is not going to need too much to it, but we'll do a similar approach. This is just a zoom in shot on our guy with the sun coming through this lattice. So we'll bring the offset down, lift up the gain, same thing, pull the gamma down. Again, we'll bring the luma mix to 0 so we can individually move the colours around without it affecting the other ones. Stretch them out to match them up. It's looking pretty good. And then we'll make another node, saturation. Maybe somewhere around there. $75. I think that's kind of it. Yeah, then just one more node for some sharpening. Cool, I think that's all that needs. Alright, now let's jump into some digital footage and talk about some color grading on that. This was a scene from a short film I shot a few years ago. I don't know why I picked this out, I just went through a hard drive. This was one of the first things I saw sitting there, so let's use this. This was shot at a dusty raceway track, that's why there's all that smoke and dust in the air in the background. And we just had one little light matte panel outside on the camera right, lighting her across the top of the car. So this was shot on the red with the, I think it was the Canon CNEs, T1.5, so it was wide open. You can see a bit of chromatic aberration. If you look at the camera raw settings, you can see this was the Dragon Color 2 and the Red Gamma 4. So I'll leave that original setting on there, how we shot it, and we'll just push the colors around from there. So I'll get the offset and just push it a little bit away from the green, a bit more blue into the shadows. We'll turn the saturation up, and we're in the log wheels, so I'll just level out the black so they're pretty equal. Obviously the lights in the background are clipping, but I'll just grab the highlights in the log and just so they roll off a bit nicer. Cool, that's looking alright. Alright, I'll make another node. I think I'll just select her face and we'll alter the color a little bit so she's not just dead. Select that. Denoise and then blur it a little bit. And then in the gamma, I'll just push it towards the red and the yellow. I think that's pretty good. All right, another node, and this is something I don't always do, but I just done this recently, and it works pretty cool. Using the glow feature and using the soft light, moving around so it's not too hectic, and then changing the color to blue, so it'll make all these lights in the background add a bit of a blue tone to it. And then we'll do another node and add some grain. So I usually start with the 16mm 500T, but then I'll alter it. And how I like to do it, I'll usually bring the size right down so it's quite small, but grab the grain strength and crank that up. Soldier boy. And then with the softness, I'll pull this the other way so it sharpens it up a bit more. I think it just looks a bit nicer when you do it this way and you don't have the grain too big. I think having more grain of a small size works better. I don't know, I've just found that from trial and error. Alright, cool, I think that's it. Alright, we'll do another one of this girl skateboarding here that I shot for an ad recently. This was shot on the same red, again, with the Atlas Orion anamorphics. This would have been the 32mm. So I'm just rolling along with her on my skateboard as well, and risked the life of the camera and the lens to get this shot. So this is how we shot it and what the camera saw on the day. What I'm going to do is put it back to the log setting, and then I'm going to use a different conversion LUT. I'm going to use the Kodak one that DaVinci supplies. The Kodak 2383 D65. That's already looking pretty good, but we can fix it up to fit our shot. So I'm just going to pull it down a bit more on the offset, and then go into the log wheels and just lift that up so it's not underneath the shadows. Kind of a film sort of lifted shadow kind of look. And then we'll do another node, lift up the saturation a bit, somewhere around there. Alright, then we'll add a bit more grain to this one. Similar approach to the last one. Crank that strength up. Bring it down just a little bit, the size of the grain, and then make the grain a bit sharper. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Then on another node, sharpen it up. Alright, so that's my workflow at the moment. I don't really have any set rules on especially how I do that 16mm stuff. It's just trial and error, but I'm always changing how I do this. This is just how I'm doing it at the moment. And so I imagine it will change more in the future. So I've got a few more on-set lighting breakdown videos coming up. So if we're all still alive, then I'll see you in the next couple of weeks.